Welcome to our weekly show for the National Association of Independent Medical Practices. You can find us at NAIMP.org. NAIMP is an organization focused on helping independent medical practices become more successful by providing innovative discussions, networking with like-minded professionals, and opportunities for growth, education, and increased revenue. Check out our website today at naimp.org.
Hello, this is Shirley Cress-Dudley, and welcome to today's show. Our guest speaker today is Mary Beth Gettins, and we're excited to have her back. She's the managing attorney of Gettins Law. Their focus is HIPAA, healthcare, privacy, and security. Mary Beth has spent years in business working alongside healthcare professionals, entrepreneurs, CEOs, marketing directors, human resource management, and other professionals. She is a tenured business attorney with a background in franchising and healthcare. Before entering the legal profession, Mary Beth worked for more than 9 years in the healthcare industry. Upon being admitted to the practice of law, she worked as general counsel for national brands. She is an accomplished writer and speaker with published topics on both healthcare and franchising. Mary Beth is a member of the American Bar Association, the American Bar Association Franchise Forum, the American Health Lawyers Association, the Ohio Bar Association, the Legacy Center, and the Boomer Authority. She has been a guest contributor on the Boomer Authority, Blue Mau Mau, and the Franchise Wire, and we're happy to have her today. Again, our topic is mobility, how to stay securely connected. So Mary Beth, welcome back, and I'll let you begin the presentation. You take the lead.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. Today's topic is mobility and how to stay securely connected. With today's world, it has changed a lot. We're getting into a lot of new forms, a lot of ways to communicate, a lot of ways to stay connected. And here's just a couple: texting, email, Wi-Fi, web portals, file share, software as a service, cloud storage, instant messaging, virtual networks. There's just countless ways that you can reach out to people, send messages. You can pull up information on your cell phones or at home or while you're on the road at a training program. The possibilities are truly infinite. But we're going to talk a little bit about today is how to stay connected, how to be a communicator, and still maintain privacy and security of health information. So the first question that always comes up is, okay, does the privacy and security rules allow for mobility? Is it okay to send email? Is it okay to have a joint calendar where you send invites or scheduling appointments and things? Does it contemplate being able to access medical records virtually or send them virtually? And the answer to all this is yes. Really, the rules, the healthcare privacy and security rules, do not prohibit any form of mobility. To the contrary, they contemplate it. The rules realize that the world is moving towards mobility, accessibility, transparency, and all those things mandate that we have mobility. So when we do this, though, the rule does say that we have to maintain privacy and security when we go about our daily business and are mobile. So let's delve into that a little bit. So when we look at the security of maintaining privacy, there's really 4 pressure points, and I kind of dubbed them pressure points, that can create privacy and security issues or points of threats or vulnerability or risks. First is the applications, and those are kinds of the software and the programs that you use to stay mobile and you use to be connected and get information. The next one is transmission carriers, and that's how we send information, whether by email or we connect to the internet from Wi-Fi. It's those transmission things, how we send things. The third pressure point is devices, and those are the kinds of things that we use to be connected, and that could be your computer, your laptop, your smartphone, even your Bluetooth. So those are the things, the tangible things that help us stay connected. And of course, the users. We're a pressure point. You, me, anybody that touches information is a pressure point, presents a vulnerability, and presents a risk. So now that we've identified the 4 areas that can create vulnerabilities and risks, and pressure points, we're going to delve into each one separately. The first one is applications, and I kind of listed, just rambled off a slew of them, but we're going to break them down just a little bit to understand how they're different and what they use and what's their modes and means. The first is email messaging. That's been one that we're all familiar with, is very universal. There's probably not a day that you don't go check email, maybe not even an hour that you don't check your email and get information that way or send information that way. It is a primary form of communication, and it's a universal form of communication. It's a way that something everyone pretty much has, with a few minor exceptions, I suppose. The next is texting. That's become more of a nuance. And we have seen that more in our personalized, I'll text my teen and say, hey, I'm going to the grocery store, do you need anything? But texting has also become a means of business communication and a means of healthcare communication. There are many benefits to it, as opposed to email that goes through an internet connection, so you have to be connected to a Wi-Fi, or you have to be somewhere that has a connection. With texting, it runs through a phone line. So it is infinitely easier to transmit anywhere and everywhere. There's a few places that don't have cell phone reception. Upon occasion I go hiking out in the woods, and that doesn't have cell phone reception. But if you're driving in a car, you're going to have cell phone reception. You may not have Wi-Fi connection or wireless internet connection, but you're going to have cell phone. So texting is a really nice way to stay connected more broadly in more places, more venues. But there's risk with that, and we'll talk about more of those. The next is cloud storage. And cloud storage we've maybe used again, a lot of these applications we've used into our personal lives and are now kind of moving into the business world. Perhaps Dropbox. Everybody knows about Dropbox, and it first started out with people uploading their pictures to Dropbox. But that's a cloud storage, and what it does is it saves your information in the cloud. It saves it virtually. It is not physically at your home or on your computer. It is up in the cloud. And the nice thing about cloud storage is that wherever you are, you can connect to it. So if I'm meeting with a client, I can go to my cloud storage provider and access files. Again, the versatility with that, the connectivity, the mobility with that is so enticing. But again, there's issues with how do we do that and how do we do it safely. Here's a couple more applications. File share. File share is very congruent with Dropbox. It runs off the same principle. Basically, you have information stored virtually, and you send a hyperlink to it. And there's a couple entities that have it, Google, Cisco, and there's other file sharing techniques. And the nice thing about that, it has capacity to store it virtually, and then you can send a link to it. Now, with that file sharing, you can put protocols and safeguards in place, like you can, send the link, and in order to access the link, the person has to enter a user ID and password. So again, there's safeguards with those kinds of applications. They're really nice ways to use email because we know email is universal. We know that it offers a way of transmitting information easily, no more mail. and it can send huge information with a little link. And there's some safeguards in it. Also with file share, there's also tracking ability. So if you go into your drive, your file share drive, you can see who's accessed it. You can also cut off access. So let's say that you want to send it to somebody. Maybe it's another person that works in your office. Maybe it's somebody that's also having is part of the treatment team. But that person eventually maybe leaves, maybe doesn't treat the patient anymore. You can cut off their accessibility. Also, if there's ever a breach or a threat, you can also inventory who's seen that file. So file sharing is a great technique. And even with cloud storage can offer very similar safeguards. You can also encrypt information in the cloud. You can track information in the cloud. There's a lot of safeguards that you can put in place. There's a lot of ways that you can monitor and that you can preempt potential risks with these new cloud applications. Software as a service. And it's got an acronym SaaS, which we're seeing more and more. And that's kind of a hybrid. We're all used to like Microsoft or QuickBooks or other software that we install on our computer. And they're in our hard drive, and it's all bound in our device. Software as a service is a hybrid because it's that software, but it's in the cloud. So you may have an icon on your computer or that kind of connects to it, but the software and your application is cloud-based. You can access it cloud-based, so virtually through Wi-Fi. And that offers many great benefits. So, for example, you can share information readily with people. You can access it other places. So there's many benefits, even Outlook 360. A lot of these applications are great tools. They're great ways to step into the new mobility age and become connected and share information. One thing that you want to look at is what software do I have? Is it an alternative to move to software as a service? Because a lot of the programs that are currently offered or historically offered or traditionally offered can and are being offered as software as a service. The next application is web portals. Web portals are a web page. So if you go to a website, there's a page where people can input information and it goes in a database to share, to send information. Web portals are a great avenue for if you're doing intakes of patients. They can insert their information into that. They can check appointments. They can interface with their treatment records, that sort of thing. They're, again, a great tool to sharing information, giving information, transmitting information. These are really great interfaces because people are comfortable going to a website. One of the first things that people do when they're beginning to form a relationship with you is to go to your website. Well, if there's a tab on your website that they can click on and you can begin to communicate with them that way, it's another way of staying connected and making you easier and more desirable to be a partner with. So those are the applications, and there's lots of them. There's lots of variations there, and as we move into the future, there's going to be more and more different kinds of applications that are being offered. Commonly, you'll hear, "Oh, I got this new app." Well, these are applications that are kind of like these, and they're becoming more robust. So when we look at applications, we want to go back again to what does the privacy and security rule require? So in all these types that we've just talked about, whether it's email, whether it's texting, whether it's software as a service, whether it's file share, all those applications are storing patient information. So to that end, that means that those applications are going to be business associates. Now, it's a little different, and it sounds really odd because before, when you had, you installed Windows on your computer, they weren't a business associate because Windows, Microsoft, never sees your information. They don't store your information because their software is actually stored on your unit, on your device. But when we move to an application, that's when information is stored virtually by the application provider or host. And that's what makes it a concern, and that's what brings it into the auspices of a business associate relationship. Because if someone's going to store patient information, it needs to be stored in a way that's safe, in a way that has protocols, in a way that can be monitored and tracked. So when you look at any application, you have to think, okay, that's great. But if they're going to store my information, I have to make sure they're HIPAA compliant or they have policy and procedure is in place. And you have to look at getting a business associate agreement signed. A lot of them will have, if you go to the websites and stuff, they'll have information about business associates, and if they will agree to signing one, to covenanting and agreeing to be to follow practices, privacy and security practices. So that is kind of part of your due diligence when you look at bringing in applications. Is this going to be one that meets the standards that are sufficient for me to use? Because they offer great opportunities, and not all of them are universal. So when we look at, like, emailing, and I keep going back to email because it's very universal, or storage providers, or as software as a service, go to them, and inevitably they'll have it on their website. Or if you talk to a representative, say, I'm a covered entity. If I begin to work with you, I'm going to need this. What do you do about that? And if they say we don't, then you say I can't, because that's the way it works. Now remember, with all these applications, the first question you have to ask yourself is it going to store patient information? So, for example, if you have email, and everybody uses email, but if you make a commitment not to send or store patient information via email, then this equation is null, because it just comes down to the first question: am I going to store, transmit, or input patient information in this application? And if the answer is yes, then you need to look at a business associate relationship and go on with it there. That's applications. Let's move on to the next pressure point, which is transmission carriers. So I look at that as kind of, how do you send information? Because it's one place and you're getting it to another, and that's what I have dubbed transmission carriers. So traditionally, like if you send mail, the United States Postal Service is the carrier. If you send an email, then it's sent through a wireless internet connection, Wi-Fi. Okay, and there's other ways to transmit information. Virtual private networks. Virtual private networks they're like the HOA lane on a highway. I used to live in Texas many moons ago, and they have a special lane devoted to cars that have more than one passenger. And it's a separate lane going down the highway. Well, VPNs are very similar to that. What they are is they're a little tunnel on the wireless network, internet, that is private, that is password protected. And through that VPN, you can get to your computer, or you can get to a network drive, you could maybe get to software as a service or cloud storage, but they're private because they're not open to everybody. They're not a public network connection. And depending on the application they're trying to reach, you can use a VPN to get there. They're one of the really nice safeguards for privacy and security, because if you use a virtual private network, you're boxing out the public. You're only letting people in that have that secret password and ID. And so that's the beauty of them. And a lot of applications use that venue to transmit information as a transmission carrier. Another transmission carrier is cellular connections, and that's what we use for our cell phones. Again, we talked about the beauty of these because they're nice because they're pretty much everywhere, where other ways of transmission are kind of limited to venue. Pretty much you can call anybody on your cell phone anywhere, anytime, except like I talked about when I'm walking in the woods. But 90% of the time, they're going to offer a connection that's available. So there are great ways to do that. So, text messages use cellular connections. There are some applications that also use cellular connections. So when we talk about transmission carriers, they're not like applications. They are not business associates. And you say, well, why not? Well, because the information is never stored there. Because typically, the carrier doesn't need to see the information that's being transmitted in order to make that happen. Okay? So, excuse me, when you don't have to get a business associate agreement from Horizon because you have a cell phone from Horizon. You don't have to go to Linksys, who is your router provider, and get a business associate agreement. I giggle because it sounds odd, and it just doesn't have to be. And again, the nuance there is because it is not stored there. The information is not stored by the transmission carrier, and the transmission carrier does not need to see the information that's being transmitted in order to carry out the task. But with that said, be mindful that the onus falls back on the covered entity, you, to make sure that the transmission method has reasonable safeguards. Just because you don't get a business associate agreement signed doesn't mean that safeguards and privacy concerns fall by the wayside. It means that you have to look at, okay, can I use this method? Can I use public Wi-Fi to send information? Is it secure? Is it going to jeopardize the privacy of the information I'm sending? And if it does, you can't use it. So basically it comes down to a litmus test that you must do and put protocols and policies and procedures in place at your office to make sure that the transmission methods are safe and secure. So, and there's different ways that you can do that. And you can put firewalls in place. You have passwords. When you go to an office, a lot of times say, hey, can I get the password for your Wi-Fi? There's lots of things that you can do to put in place to make sure the methods of transmission are safe and secure. And that's where you need to kind of do the risk analysis to determine excuse me, what the risk vulnerability is and what safeguards are appropriate for that situation and that transmission method. Okay, so let's look at the third pressure point. That is devices. And as we become more mobile, this list of devices becomes more robust. Historically, we've always used desktop computers and laptop computers to access information, to send information. But that list is kind of growing because now we have to include cell phones and tablets. And then we have to think about, okay, who owns these devices? You can't just think of the devices that are in your office. You can't just look around your physical office space and say, well, I have to only worry about the computers that are here. You have to think about all devices that are used to transmit, send, input information. And if any of those devices are inputting, sharing, or transmitting patient information, then you need to think about their security. You need to put in place safeguards to protect the privacy of the information that is being inputted and received from those devices. And some of those safeguards, it's kind of robust. We've gotten really good at figuring out what we need to have on computers, passwords and antivirus software and things like that. But all those things need to transcend beyond just computers, to every device that transmits information. I mean, you don't think about it, but even cell phones, there's antivirus software that can be installed on cell phones. Obviously, cell phones, you can put a password protection in. And there's even greater protections that can be offered with tablets and cell phones than beyond computers. Like, you can access them remotely, you can track them, you can go ahead and wipe them if there are so many failed login attempts. But when you think about the safeguards that you put in place, you need to be thinking about all the devices. And you need to think about it when it's in use and when you dispose of it or reuse it. There's the comic strip here, and it's kind of a fun one. And I mean no harm because, you know, I mentioned I have tweens and I do have dogs. But the bumper sticker here says, "My copier is smarter than your honor student." And it's meant to be funny because everything is smart these days. It's just not cell phones. This cartoon was actually inspired by a case where a company had leased a copier and returned the copier to the leasing company without erasing the hard drive. Yes, I said hard drive. There's a memory on even a copier that retains the information that is sent to that copier to be printed out. So when we think of all of the safeguards we have to have in place, it's everything that pretty much plugs into a wall is smart these days, and we have to be thinking about policies and procedures and safeguards to protect the privacy information that's sent to those devices. Okay, and finally, we do come to users. That's you, me, and anybody else that comes into contact with patient information. One of the biggest risk factors can actually be the users. You know, because users input the wrong information, they download software that may have malware attached to it, they lose things, people steal things from us. Users can be a huge vulnerability. And one thing that we have to realize is that every time that a user downloads information onto a device, it is stored there, it's saved there. And so it's really important to educate users about the vulnerabilities and about the safeguards that need to be taken. And also with mobility, it's not just staff, it's patients. Sometimes you may be communicating with patients via mobility. So when you talk about patients, it's okay. In fact, the rule contemplates, the HIPAA rule says that patients may request their information to be emailed to them. They may want to email you about these types of things, but reasonable safeguards should be taken. And here's a little bit. And the thing is, too, is you can't qualify your communication with patients based upon their agreement or covenant to take safeguards on their own devices. That's just going beyond boundaries. So what you do instead is you advise patients about the risks associated with connectivity. So if they're sharing information on a website portal, you tell them by by using this web portal, you may expose yourself to security risks, which such as use with public Wi-Fi. The information that you obtain from this web portal may be downloaded on your device, those kinds of things. So you tell them about the risk factors so that they're educated. They have a little bit of knowledge of, okay, I need to be a little cautious about, what I'm doing here, and I know I'm now an educated consumer. Get their consent. A lot of times, you tell them what the risks are, say, it's okay, we email you. We take these protocols, realize that these are your risks. Can we email you? Most people know the risks. They've heard about the risks of portals, and surveys have shown that really patients want to be connected. So get their consent. And then finally, always share the minimum amount necessary. So when you're sending an email, send only what you need to know, what they need to know in order to do this. If they're inputting information into a web portal, get enough information to verify who they are and share the information that they're looking for. Don't give them their whole medical history. Don't give them like a plethora of extenuous information that they don't want or need, because if you can limit the amount that's shared, it eliminates the amount that's at risk. So those are the kind of steps that you need to be taking when you're creating connectivity venues with your patients. Really, the option is not to step aside and not participate in connectivity, because all providers are going to connectivity. It is something that patients want. It is something that is an inevitable with the future. However, with that said, it's just being smart about it and doing it in a way that's very conscious to the sensitivity and the privacy of information. So now we talked about patients, you also need to stop and think about how do I train my staff? And the first thing you want to do is try to educate them about the risks that are out there. You know, okay, if I do this, what's the bad things that can happen? Where's the monsters at? And what kind of policies and procedures are in place at your office to safeguard against those risks? And then finally, how make your staff the whistleblowers. Have them tell you when something's not performing right, when they see a gap, they see how to do something better, because they're the people that are the front lines. They're the people that are coming into contact with the technology, with the information all the time, and they're going to be in the know. So you want to get them connected to you and knowing a proper channel to report any malfunctions, any potential threats, or any actual events of security breaches. So now we want to talk a little bit about some of those risks, because a lot of times just going out and saying we need to take all these safeguards about being mobile and not understanding why can seem like, you know, a frivolous endeavor. So here, just kind of outline some of the threats that may be posed for mobility. And really a lot of them connect because the information is electronic. Here, this is cartoon is inspired by an actual experience that I had. I had a caller that claimed to be from a Windows firewall, and he wants some information about me. And I thought, you know, this is odd. Nobody calls from Windows, Microsoft, little old me. But this was a pursing attempt. Pursing is an attempt to gain information about your passwords, your security, or your electronic information via a contact from a wrongdoer that professes to be from a reliable source. Pursing can be in the form of a telephone call like the one I experienced. It can come in the form of an email. It's very common to get an email. In fact, there was a kind of a rash of pursing emails that professed to be from Amazon, and they were trying to get people to say we had problems with your Amazon account, and please verify your information by inputting it below. Again, you know, it was somebody who was posing as a reliable source, Amazon, that everybody pretty much goes to Amazon, so they have an Amazon account, and they were attempting to get password information to use it in a wrong way. So pursing is common. It can come in the form of even text messages, emails, telephone calls, and they're becoming more prevalent, and they're becoming kind of savvy at this. You know, in fact, the guy that I talked to on the phone was very articulate. He was very chatty and kind of easy to talk to. Again, with these emails, they'll kind of replicate themselves very much like the reliable source. But you got to be cautious and realize that divulging information to third parties through emails or telephone calls can be a pursing attempt. The other one that we're really familiar with is malware and antiviruses. And you think, oh, nobody falls for that one anymore. Yeah, they do. This is an incident where an employee of a huge health organization clicked on an email attachment that infected her computer, not only her computer, but the whole network system. With malware and antiviruses, they can come in many forms as well. They can come in email attachments. They can actually pop up on websites. They can, you can get them from the little lines on that you know, from your Google search thing, whatever. They come in many different forms. And the issue here with it is they can be very detrimental. They can stop your device from working. They can spread throughout your computer network. They can wipe files. They can gather your sensitive information. So when you look at malware, is educating about that risk. And then, of course, you know, as we use electronic technology, there's a whole different learning curve. That we're all new at this. New applications can be challenging, and there can be just input errors. So creating safeguards within your system to, you know, pop-up windows. Do you really want to save this to the public drive? Do you really, you know, or they have to enter additional passwords? So getting safeguards in place that help with the use of new technologies to kind of prompt people through in riskful situations is good too. So we've really gone through a lot of different risk factors, and we've gone through the pressure points. And as I mentioned in the presentation earlier, this is a lot of information, and your first inclination may be to say, gosh, I'm just not going there. But really, as we step into the future, the option of participating in mobility and connectivity is not going to be optional. It is something that that your work and operations is going to demand. It's something the patients are going to demand, and so really it's stepping into the technology in a way that you can embrace it and feel secure and maintain the privacy of information. Looking at the pressure points and getting the safeguards in place so you can have some level of confidence when you do it. That kind of concludes our conversation for today. You know, here's some little information about our website and the services we offer. Do visit us. We do have a blog that maintains information and tips and stuff on privacy and security. But I thank you for listening, and I hope it's been helpful.
Well, thank you, Mary Beth. In fact, I told a few of our listeners that we were having you back, and they were excited because this is a very relevant issue today. Things come up daily related to privacy, so we appreciate the additional information. And if you would like to learn more, you can get in touch with Mary Beth at gettinslaw.com, GETTINSLAW.com, or 513-400-3895. And I don't know if you noticed, as she was going through the presentation, she mentioned several cartoons, and there's some really great ones in this presentation that if you'd like to view the slides, go to naimp.org and click on this particular presentation, and also on iTunes to listen to some of the others. So thanks again, Mary Beth, for the very helpful information.
Thank you for inviting me.
And for our listeners, we'll see you next time. Thank you.